Shalom again, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com, bringing to you today's daily lesson in the Sefer Yetzirah. Today, lesson 55. We are in the third chapter and the sixth Mishnah, and of course, we dedicate these classes to the safety, the health, the well-being, and the prosperity of everybody around the world today, facing the trials and tribulations that they are, reminding you every obstacle is an opportunity. And the way that you need to look at it is to shift the focus of your mind. Because when you look out, remember the famous words from the book of Psalms, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. From whence will come my help? My help is from Hashem, Lord, maker of the heavens and the earth. Mountains. Well, if you're dealing with the Rockies or the Atlas or the Himalayas, right? Yeah, those are pretty serious mountains. But the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis, they're not the Himalayas. They're not the Rockies. They're not the Atlas Mountains. They are what they are. Some things that we face are high and difficult. Some things are just low and easy. But a lot of it is perception. We have a saying, do not make mountains, or I should say, do not make molehills, which are small little things, into mountains. Turn your mountains into molehills. Take things that are big, make them small. Make things simple. Before we even get in to what we're going to read now, I think one of the best words of advice actually come from the book of Psalms, where the verse from Psalm 19 says, Torat Hashem tamimah mashivat nefesh. Nefesh is soul, and we're going to explain that in a minute. The Torah of Hashem, which is not the rituals and laws of Judaism, but the universal way that God has made. The word is timimah, which doesn't mean pure, it means simple. Pashut, as we'd say, simple. And it is mashivat, which means it restores your nefesh, which is your soul. Now, it's about the soul that we're here to talk about in this class. Mishnah 6 is going to talk about the soul. And soul, essentially, is consciousness. Not necessarily the mind, because as we're going to see here, there are 5 levels of consciousness, and we refer to them as 5 levels of soul. In traditional Kabbalah, these 5 levels are called the NaRaN'HaY, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Haya, and Yehida. Exactly what they are, we'll explain that. That's what we're here for. But remember, in order to achieve soul or consciousness, one must be in a state of natural alignment and balance, which is called timimut or timimah, with the natural order, which we call Torah. Now remember, in our Jewish tradition, we look at Torah as being the universal way. Indeed, our brothers in Islam understand the Quran in exactly the same way. They think of the universal Quran, cool and groovy. It's very similar, echoing the same teaching in the teachings of Lao Tzu about the understanding of the Tao from the Chinese tradition, the natural, normal order of the way of the universe. Whether we like it or not, there really is an order to the way of the universe. Even those who want to deny belief in religion and a God, do whatever they want, they can't deny the reality of the universe around them. The universe around us is an ordered, intelligent, living organism. And we, as human beings, are part of it. Consider us like individual cells in the greater body of things. Our awareness of this is important for our ability to actually go with the flow. Think about this. If you were an individual cell in the body and you decided heck with the body. I'm going off my own way. I'm going to do my own thing. I am my own cell. I'm going to make things the way I want. You know what we call that? A cancer. Yeah. So if you think, oh my gosh, look at all the people in the world today. Yeah, well, that's why our, in quote, corpus body of humanity, of the world, is cancer-ridden. We're the cancer. Oh, let's get rid of all the humans. No, you don't do that. You don't say, okay, the answer to getting rid of bad cells is to get rid of all cells. That's a little crazy there. That's cancerous mentality. No. Let's read in the Sefer Yetzirah, and now let's expand upon this to understand consciousness. Part of this understanding must be a resonance within you. Or in other words, if you're going to just sit here, I'm going to write the notes of what the rabbi says and take the outside information and stick it in, you're missing the point. This is supposed to resonate something within you. It's supposed to make that little bell go off inside you, go, oh yeah, I get it now. And allow the inner awareness, which comes from your connection to the outside world, to touch you. And when you can do this and live like this, then you'll understand the words that I always open up with about turning obstacles into opportunities, and understand the concept of perception. Remember quantum physics, perception, all that stuff? Go look it up. 300 Nefesh. Remember we had the three worlds of Olam, Shana, Nefesh, space, time, and Nefesh, soul or consciousness. This is how we are able to interact with and influence space and time. We don't do this magically. We do this naturally. How do we influence space and time naturally? I build things. I have a house. I pay bills. I work. We build the structure of human civilization. That affects things in both space and time. I think that's kind of obvious, isn't it? But it goes deeper than that. Because the human mind consciousness taps into all the different levels in our reality. And we can interact with and therefore influence all of them. In the soul, Nefesh, and here we have Zachar the Nekeva, because consciousness is male and female. Now, this is a very important point. Even though today we live in a society which is trying to elevate femininity to try to overcome, I don't know how many centuries, millennia of repression, and that is true, but femininity is not masculinity. Men and women are not the same. Equal? Yeah, like yin and yang, equal, yeah, but you're opposites. Obviously, we know the anatomical nature of these things, but as many of the modern psychologists and psychiatrists have shown, in spite of the political incorrectness of their movement, men and women think differently. We perceive the world differently. Anybody who's married to a spouse knows this very well. Go sit and talk to your spouse and look at anything, and you'll see opposite perspectives. It always leads to, shall we say, interesting conversations and dialogue. Sometimes botching in their heads. But this is the normal way of things. We're not meant to be, in quote, loggerheads with one another. We're meant to see and learn from each other's perspective. And that is important. Remember, men, the male of the species, will see things from one perspective. The female of the species will see from a different perspective. In our symbolism, we say that men see things through the mem, letter mem perspective, whereas women see through the letter shin perspective, which is kind of like the opposite of modern pop psychology, which states men are from Mars and women are from Venus. It might be more the other way around. As the wise words of Shakespeare have said, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That scorn is the gevurah, the din, the severity, the fire of femininity, which, mind you, is also the image of the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, which is a power of energy, naturally speaking, that you don't mess with. You get too close in a little bit wrong way, and bam! Nadav and Avihu, right, from the Torah, when they went to offer her, it was called strange fire. That beautiful lady did not like their inappropriate advances. This is why the way of the lady, the Giveret, we call it Ikeret Habayit. But enough of that. We talk about this in other places. 3 levels of consciousness, 3 places of consciousness. Rosh, Beten, Gavia. The head, the belly, and the body. The head comes from fire. The stomach comes from water. And the body is from the spirit, which balances between them. Now let's just strip all the symbolisms and get down to the essence. 3 levels of consciousness, okay, corresponding to the Hadar, the Chokhmah, Bina, Dat. And you got to understand, the male of the species, in spite of our present understanding of him being the rational and the intelligent one, men are much more pliable than that. Men are much more intuitive and psychic than that. But you say, oh, I don't see that in men today. You're right. Because even though these are male attributes, the male is obviously more, what's the word I'm looking for? Attracted towards the female, and therefore materializes or seeks to materialize the female attributes. The female is the exact same thing. She's on that left column. She is intellect. She is the rational. But yet she also seeks to draw the male, so she magnetically draws the male attributes. And this is the merging of the 2 columns of the Sefirot. So in my eBook, Sefirot within us, I'll put a link to it in the course here if you're interested. I address all the things of the Sefirotic elements of personality within men and women and give all kinds of, teachings on that. But understand this. The male and female elements and aspects of how we look at things has its origins in the Sefirot. And it materializes here in the nature and way of how we understand things. Like I said, we have 5 levels of soul. But our Sefer Yetzirah uses the word Nefesh, which is the, quote, lowest level of soul. Now, Nefesh usually refers to just the fundamental life force energy around. Call it Nefesh, call it Chi, Ki, Prana, Orgon, Kundalini, life force energy. But that life force energy of this, what we call, again, Nefesh, it in of itself has within it its own subjective 5 parts of soul, or its 5 levels of consciousness. So our thinking brain right here, that's what we call the neshama. And our neshama that we use today is actually just the subjective neshama of the Nefesh. So we have the NaRaN'HaY of the Nefesh. Hayim Vital explains all this stuff in the Shara Gilgulim. You could look up in my course on the souls. I have lessons of this from the Shara Gilgulim and the Etz Hayim series. Go to my course page on KosherTorah, and you'll find that. You can look up Gilgulim on KosherTorah. You'll see some of the essays. I've translated some of this stuff too. But the point is this, and you need to understand how we as human beings interact with the world. That which we call consciousness is only 3-pronged, 3-tiered, corresponding to the Hesedin Rachamim. And that is what we call the Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama level. The Neshama level, like I just said, corresponds to your brain, your intellect. Your Nefesh level is, of course, your belly, your Dantien. And the Ruach level is the body, which is the heart, which is the breath. But aside from this physical association, these are all levels of actual consciousness. And it's that Nefesh level, which is in the belly, which actually taps into the highest. The two higher levels of consciousness are called Haya and Yechidah, two higher levels of soul. But they are referred to as being outside the body, outside the vessel. And they're called makifim, or surrounding, or auric energies, because it's the Haya and Yechidah levels of soul which tap us into, connect us to the higher, outside of the three-dimensional box of our experience. So that's why they're called makifim, surrounding lights, as opposed to internal, meaning in the mind. So the nefesh, that level which connects us to our body, is actually tapped into that higher ethereal, spiritual, fourth dimensional element of consciousness, soul. And that's why our physical bodies, through the life force energy, pretty much run autonomously, automatically, guided by a higher or unconscious force, which we do not see or even are aware of. We're aware of our intellectual mind, but that intellectual mind is actually submissive to, or secondary to, the higher intuitive psychic mind. This is that relationship of Chokhmah and Bina, referred to in the Sefirot or Partsufim as Abba and Ima, mommy and daddy. Chokhmah and Bina, wisdom and intellect, intuitive and intellect and rational. So this is that relationship. That is the foundation of the male and the female. And you will see that in relationships between men and women, I think women will more agree with this. Ladies, if you disagree with me, please write so in the comments, wherever you are, Facebook, YouTube, and stuff. Women tend to be much more grounded than men. Men tend to be more, a little out there, whether that's expressed in more in imaginative ways in business and the like. Women, once they get settled with their man, they want to have an established house. They want security. They want firmness. They want stability. That's only natural expression of the mind, bina, fire, clearing the way, making things go, whereas water flows. And this explains a lot of masculinity as such. So by understanding the nature of human personalities as they are explained to us, we recognize the reality of our own inner dynamics. And remember, we've discussed this in our previous lesson. Every male of the species has his inner female. Every female of the species has her inner male. So when men and women merge together, the woman's inner male gets activated and the man's inner female gets activated, and they both extenuate and interact with and help develop within the individual one's own opposite side. So the more a man is involved with his woman, the more feminine he becomes. And the more the woman is involved with her man, the more male she becomes. And it becomes the merging and the harmony of the two. Check this out over long-term relationships, and you'll see how true it is. And it's when we do not go in the natural order and flow of things that these things become disrupted, and you find people can't live with one another. I mean, yeah, there really is something to what we call in Hebrew shidduchim, matchmaker, soulmates. It's a matter of balance. So understand now, consciousness. We need to contemplate and reflect its reality within us. And as we recognize our own emesh, our own hadar, our own masculine and feminine traits, and the breath, that's what connects us to the universe. That's the balance between the intuitive and the intellectual, which sometimes are at loggerheads with one another. The Alef is the silence, the attunement with the universe. And that's the Ruach, which flows like air between us. And when we tap into the Alef and the Mem, the Alef and the Shin. We create the harmony of all. This is how we need to understand consciousness and apply it for the betterment of ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. Contemplate these things. Check out what I have available for you in the links below, and I will see you in our next class. Shalom.